Hey, this is Coach DK with Coffee Cup Games. A couple of weeks ago, I created a couple of videos discussing the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. In those videos, I went over all the individuals who I believe deserve at least a consideration for the inaugural class. Unfortunately, before I was able to post those videos, Strat-O-Matic released the 6 individuals who would be included in the inaugural class for their Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. At that time, I decided not to post the videos that I had created, thinking it was outdated and would not have any kind of relevance. A couple of days ago, I went and re-looked at those videos. I realized that, the content in those videos was still good, and as a person who loves the Strat-O-Matic community as well as its culture, I found that that information would be something that I personally would enjoy seeing. It would be great to hear the names that have existed and have been impactful throughout the history of Strat-O-Matic. So I'm going to go ahead and post those videos anyways, even though they are after the fact that Strat-O-Matic has already announced its inaugural class. I still believe these videos do serve a great purpose. Season replays, fantasy drafts, ultimate creative leagues, and what if tournament. It's Coffee Cup Games with the Coach DKM. Hey, this is Coach DK with Coffee Cup Games. Hope you guys are having a good one. In this episode, we're going to do a very special episode of the Coach's Corner. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about who I believe should be considered, as well as ultimately who should be included in the inaugural Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. That's right, Strat-O-Matic announced that they're going to have their inaugural Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame induction at opening day on February 17th, 2023 at their headquarters in Glen Head, New York. Strat-O-Matic announced that for their inaugural Hall of Fame induction, it will include 6 significant contributors to the Strat-O-Matic community over the past 62 years. And so we are going to announce who we believe are the top contenders for this inaugural class of the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. Now, before we start off, I just want to make sure to point out that I have not talked to any current staff who work for the Strat-O-Matic company. I don't have any insider information. I just simply did my own research, asked questions on different Facebook pages, different internet sites, and I tried to accumulate who I believe is the who's who of Strat-O-Matic history. Secondly, I created this channel because I wanted to highlight, enrich, and promote the company, the community, and the culture of Strat-O-Matic. I did genuinely try to find the best of the best. If I did miss anybody who is deserving, I apologize. It was done out of ignorance. It was done out of inexperience and stupidity. It was not my intent to ignore anybody who was deserving. Third, obviously, this is my opinion, and so you may have some criticism, and I'm opening myself up to that. You may disagree with who I have listed as contenders. You may also list on ultimately who I think is most deserving to be put in the inaugural Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. And finally, this is my Strat-O-Matic tribute of some of the greatest people who have contributed into the company, the community, and the culture of Strat-O-Matic. There may be names that you know, there may be names you've forgotten, and maybe there's some names you've never heard of before, and this can help you appreciate the great history of Strat-O-Matic. So with all that being said, now let's go ahead, let's jump in. I read earlier what the company put out about the inaugural Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. I believe it's kind of vague when it talks about significant contributors, so I decided I would define that to help me make my selections. I have 3 parameters that I'm using to define significant contributors. The first one is that they have worked directly with Strat-O-Matic or indirectly, independently, to improve the game or the company's success. Number 2, they increased the Strat-O-Matic community by encouraging more new players or engaging existing players of the game. And finally, they have improved the culture of the Strat-O-Matic community through their efforts, initiatives, and the experience they offered. As you probably know, the National Baseball Hall of Fame has 4 categories for its inductees. Those 4 categories are the players, the managers, the umpires, and then last, the pioneers and executives. And to follow suit, I believe the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame should also have categories for its inductees. And I believe Strat-O-Matic should have 5 categories, though all 5 categories may not be represented in the inaugural class of the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. I believe as the Hall of Fame continues to grow, these are the 5 categories that should be considered and recognized. The first category is for the players. These are the gamers who play the game, who have the numbers and the notoriety to deserve being considered for the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. The second category is for leagues and tournaments. I know it may be out of the box, but I truly do believe that there are leagues and tournaments that deserve to be in the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. The third category is for the employees, or those who work directly for Strat-O-Matic. I believe the Hall of Fame should honor those who have shown a commitment to the company as well as to its games. The fourth category is for the celebrities. These are the people in the public eye who not only play the game, but have been passionate promoters of the game and the company. And the last category is for the pioneers. I have broken the pioneers into 2 subcategories. The first is called the influencers. These are the publishers, the writers, and the YouTubers who have continued to promote the game Strat-O-Matic. And the other subcategory under pioneers is the legends and icons. I believe the description of that is pretty self-explanatory. Based on these 5 categories, I came up with over 60 potential nominees for the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. And now let's jump into who I believe is the best and most deserving candidates for the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. First up is the players. In my opinion, the players need to have the numbers and the notoriety to be seriously considered for the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. Here's a picture from 2011, which includes many of the semi-finalists from the Strat-O-Matic 50th Anniversary Ultimate Fanatics contest. Hal Richmond and Doug Glanville, the 2 gentlemen standing in the front, obviously I am not considering as a Hall of Famer as a player. Unfortunately, Tom Nahigian and Larry Saleh did not make my cut with the numbers or the notoriety to justify being considered. And Bob Zuhlke, the gentleman on the far left, I do believe deserves a nomination, but in a different category. Which means 5 of the gentlemen in this picture I am considering for the Hall of Fame as a player. And not only are there these 5 players, I also believe there are several other players who deserve consideration for the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. So let's go through who I believe should be considered as players for the inaugural class of the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. I will be going over these players in alphabetical order. My first candidate is Marty Bender. He's been attending opening day since 1975. He's always usually one of the first people in line. He was one of 4 individuals selected to play Strat-O-Matic at a special event at a museum, and he was the Strat-O-Matic Ultimate Fanatic 5th place winner. Next up is Brett Caro. He was the Strat-O-Matic Ultimate Fanatic winner. He holds a Guinness World Record for consecutive hours playing Strat-O-Matic, which he did for 62 hours and 3 minutes. He has played at least 15,000 games, even though I personally believe that number is closer to 20,000 at this point. He is so passionate about the game that he actually played Strat-O-Matic on his honeymoon. Next up is Jim Calhoun. I do believe that is the proper way to say his last name. He was a Strat-O-Matic Ultimate Fanatic semi-finalist. He has been attending opening day since 1975, and as of 2014, he has not missed an opening day, and I have no record to show that he has missed one since then, which means realistically, he has attended 45 straight opening days since 1975. He was a beta tester for the baseball PC game, and many of his ratings were published in the Strat Fan magazine. Numbers matter, and that's what we're going to say about our 4th candidate, Willie Dominguez. He is the all-time leader with the most wins in Strat TPC tournaments with 4,303 as of 2022. Next up is Jeff Fleischman. He is the Strat-O-Matic Ultimate Fanatic 3rd place winner. He is also the commissioner of Gusimo, the longest running Strat-O-Matic league in Strat-O-Matic history, which started in 1971 and is entering into its 53rd year of existence. Our 6th candidate is Stu Foster. He is a very well-known and popular player. He is so popular that he is actually one of the company's favorite players. Unfortunately, I was not able to find a picture of Stu Foster or any more information than just hearing his name continuously being brought up by those who have been part of a Strat-O-Matic organization. At number 7 is Larry Fryer. He was the Strat-O-Matic Ultimate Fanatic runner-up. He is the ECBA commissioner, and his Strat-O-Matic collection is so extensive that it was actually borrowed by the company for the historical archives on the Strat-O-Matic website. When you talk about legends as players, you need to talk about Bill Meinhardt. He is the 3-time TBA world champion, and he actually won the very first TBA tournament. Next is Pete Nelson. He is the all-time leader when it comes to the major tournaments, which I consider the TBA, the Star tournaments, and the Strat TPC. He has won those 4 times. He's also included under Pioneers because he is also the Star and Strat TPC founder. At number 10 is Bill Sindelar. According to my research, he was the very first customer for Strat-O-Matic and Hal Richmond. My parents owned their own business, and I remember them having framed the $20 bill used for the very first purchase of their company, as well as the Polaroid of that customer and that customer's name. So I'm sure for Hal Richmond, Bill Sindelar has a special place in the history of Strat-O-Matic. Number 11 is Hank Smith. He was one of the original 350 customers in Strat-O-Matic. He is also a 2-time Star Tournament winner. He is an early Star leader as well as its first commissioner. Because of that, I could have put him under Pioneers, but I decided to keep him only as a player. And our last player nominee is Mike Van Valkenburg. He has won 34 Strat TPC tournaments. He is also second all-time in Strat TPC wins, being one of only 2 individuals as of 2022 has won over 4,000 games. And there you are, the 12 players that I believe are most deserving of consideration for the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. Next up is leagues and tournaments. You're probably thinking this is an odd and out-of-the-box category, and I would agree, but I do believe it is also imperative that the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame include leagues and tournaments that have been instrumental in the community and the culture of Strat-O-Matic. So let's check out my top 10 leagues and tournaments that I believe should be considered for the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. The first league that we want to consider is the Capital Baseball League. It started in 1975 and is still going strong today. Number 2 is the CBA, or the Cyber Baseball Association. It started in 1997, which is more recent than many of the other leagues that we are highlighting, but the players, including Bruce Bundy, are legendary. Number 3 is the ECBA, or the East Coast Baseball Association. It started in 1974. It is still in existence, and its commissioner is Larry Fryer, one of the candidates we had from the player category. And number 4 is the EMSBL, the East Meadow Strat-O-Matic Baseball League. It started all the way back in 1972, and I believe it is no longer in existence, as I cannot find any more information about the league since 2012. Its first commissioner was Jim Drucker, a name that you may recognize in the public eye or in the Strat-O-Matic world. It is also the league that is listed in the Strat-O-Matic Wikipedia page. And number 5 is GUSIMO, the Greater United States Strat-O-Matic Organization. It started in 1971 and is still in existence today and still going very strong. It is the only league that I could find that has been in existence for over 50 years, as the league is entering its 53rd year. Jeff Fleischman, one of the player candidates for the Hall of Fame, has been its commissioner since its first year of existence. And next is the I-75 Strat-O-Matic League. It's been in existence since 1979. It is still going strong today, and like myself, many players and gamers follow this league online. Now that we've checked out the most deserving leagues, let's check out the most deserving tournaments. The first tournament to highlight is the Lyman Bostock Memorial Tournament. It was in existence during the 1980s and the 1990s. It primarily existed in the southeast United States, mostly in Florida, and it was ran and organized by the legendary James Sanders. Our second tournament is the Star Tournaments Association. It started in 1996, filling the void after the TBA no longer existed. It was founded by Jeff Nelson and eventually evolved into what we now know as the Strat TPC around 2014-2015. Number 3 is the STPC, or the Strat-TPC, which stands for the Strat Tournaments Players Club. It came out of the Star Tournaments Association sometime around 2016, maybe as early as 2014. I believe it is the most organized and well-attended tournament in Strat-O-Matic today. The fourth and final tournament nominee is the TBA, or the Table Baseball Association. It started around 1986 and ended sometime around 1995. It was by far one of the first tournaments and most organized and popular tournaments to bring together the Strat-O-Matic community in a tournament format. There you are, 6 leagues, 4 tournaments in a category that I know is probably outside the box, but I do truly believe should be considered for the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. The third category is the employees of Strat-O-Matic. As you may know, Strat-O-Matic is not a large company. It doesn't have a lot of employees or staff. And therefore, the employees who have worked there have usually worked there for a long period of time and have had a great impact on the company's success. For an employee to be considered part of the Hall of Fame, they need to have retired and no longer be a regular employee of the company. But with that being said, there are 3 current employees who I do believe are worth mentioning. These are 3 of the leaders and executives of Strat-O-Matic, and that would be John Garcia, Adam Richman, and Len Schwartz. All 3 of them, once they retire, I do believe will be considered and should be inducted into the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. And now here are the committed employees that I believe should seriously be considered for the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. The first and most obvious person you need to talk about is Hal Richman, the creator, founder, designer, developer, the former CEO and president of Strat-O-Matic. There is no one more deserving of being included in the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame, but unfortunately, I do not believe he will be in the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame, and here's my reasons why. The first reason in my mind is because, as many of you know, Hal Richman is still very involved in the organization and is still a major decision maker when it comes to the company. I believe Hal Richman would rather, in his own humility, honor others who have been instrumental in the company's success rather than bring attention to himself. The second reason is kind of like the first. I believe they are sitting in a room trying to determine who should be included, and they're debating and discussing all the different people. I believe Hal Richman is in the room. I believe he's sitting there with guys like John Garcia and Len Schwartz and Bob Winberry and his son Adam Richman, as well as probably a guy like Glenn Guzzo. I believe they're talking about who should be included, and Hal Richman is being adamant that he should not be included, even though he is by far the most deserving person for the inaugural class of the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. And with that being said, now let's consider the employees that I believe Hal Richman and those in the room probably are considering for the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. The first employee is maybe somebody you may not know, and that is Warren Bannerman. In an interview with the National Baseball Hall of Fame, Hal Richman and his son Adam Richman talked highly about Warren Bannerman, not only who he is as a person, but also his influence on the organization. When Strat-O-Matic decided that they were going to create the advanced game, which included the lefty and the righty splits, they needed to do this with a computer programmer. Previously, Hal Richman had done all the calculations and created all the cards by hand, and so the need for a computer programmer was essential. Enter Warren Bannerman. He was the individual who was the computer programmer who was able to figure out how to take the formulas created by Hal Richman and automate them onto the cards to be able to utilize the lefty and the righty splits, as well as be able to develop the advanced game. Number 2 is Steve Barkum. He worked for the company for over 4 decades, and besides Hal Richman, he may be the longest tenured employee that Strat-O-Matic has ever had. As a research and developer, he was instrumental in helping to develop all the information and the data for the past baseball seasons. He also was included in developing the football and the basketball game. Steve Barkum, by far, may be the most deserving employee that the company has had based on his tenure as well as his influence. The next employee is Rita Larnades. She worked for the organization from 1981 to 2005. She was in customer service and shipping. She had a lot of interaction with many of the customers who showed up at Strat-O-Matic to pick up their orders. The fourth employee is one who shares a name with another, James Williams. This James Williams was known as James Essie at the organization. Not sure when he really worked. I believe it was in the 80s or 90s, and he was part of the shipping and the receiving team. The fifth employee is the other James Williams, and the more popular and well-known James Williams. In the company, he was known as James Leon. He was a sales manager and an executive for Strat-O-Matic. He was the second employee ever hired by Hal Richmond, and he was there for over 4 decades, and neither James Leon Williams or Steve Barkham are the longest tenured employees ever to work for Strat-O-Matic. James Williams was part of helping with developing the baseball, football, and the basketball games, and was for a very long time known as the basketball game expert. The sixth employee is a little bit of an odd one, but I just really felt I needed to include him in this list. Bob Winberry, who still currently works for the organization. Not sure when he's going to retire, but when he does, he, in my opinion, is a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. He is a director of product development for Strat-O-Matic, and he was a sole programmer for the computer baseball games. He has been there for 35 years and counting. The next employee to be recognized is Bob Yonk. I believe that is the proper pronunciation. He worked for the company in 1975 all the way up till 1989, and he was part of the development team. But it was Bob's wife, Linda Yonk, who many of us may have talked to or may know. She worked from the company from 1971 to 1989, almost 2 decades. She was the secretary, the phone operator, and she has probably talked to more Strat-O-Matic customers than anyone else in the history of the company. The very last employee on the list is also the very first employee. That's right, Pauline Williams, the very first employee that Hal Richmond ever hired when he started the company Strat-O-Matic in 1961. You may notice a question mark behind her name. The reason I have that is because every time I see any kind of reference to her in any kind of my research, I always just see her listed as Pauline. So I'm assuming her last name is Williams, and there's a reason why. Pauline is the mother of James Leon Williams, who was the second employee that Hal Richmond ever hired. An interesting fact about Pauline and her husband is that her husband apparently had an infatuation with the name James. James Leon Williams also had a brother, not a twin, whose name was James as well, and they called him Jimmy. But as the first employee, Pauline definitely deserves recognition and probably deserves a spot in the Inaugural Hall of Fame. So including Hal Richmond, I believe those are the 10 employees who deserve consideration for the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. The fourth of the 5 categories is the celebrities. When I use the phrase celebrity, I am talking about individuals who are normally considered public figures. The first celebrity is the legendary broadcaster Bob Costas. He has been a constant Strat-O-Matic promoter. He has been featured in various publications, as well as many articles, videos, and in the Strat-O-Matic documentary. Next up is the ESPN broadcaster and personality Bill Daughtry. Not only is he a big fan and a promoter of the game, he was also the MC during the Strat-O-Matic 50th anniversary celebration. Next up is John DeWan. He is, or at least was, a member of the Strat-O-Matic board. He is also the co-founder of Baseball Info Solutions and the founder of Stats Inc., which are both analytics companies who provide Strat-O-Matic with projections for their digital cards. Our fourth celebrity is Jim Drucker. Not only was he a commissioner of the CBA, the NBA's minor league before the G League, and Arena Football, he was also the first commissioner of the East Meadow Strat-O-Matic Baseball League, founded in 1972, and a league that we highlighted in our last category. And fifth is Doug Glanville. Best known probably recently for being a color analyst on ESPN and Baseball Tonight, but he is an avid player, he is a great promoter, and he was a featured guest at the Strat-O-Matic 50th anniversary celebration. The next celebrity is Keith Hernandez. He was a Major League Baseball star, author, actor, and a Mets broadcaster. He is an avid player and a huge promoter of the Strat-O-Matic game. What really is special about Keith Hernandez, which I need to make sure to emphasize, is the fact that when he was inducted into the Mets Hall of Fame, they made him a mosaic, much of which was made out of Strat-O-Matic baseball cards. Number 7 is the now deceased Rick Mahler. Not only was he a major league pitcher and a minor league pitching coach, he was also a passionate and avid player of the game Strat-O-Matic. And next up is the legendary broadcaster John Miller. He is a member of the National Broadcaster and Sports Writers Association Hall of Fame. In 2020, John Miller used his broadcasting and his love for Strat-O-Matic as he decided to call many of the Giants games that were being missed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and he broadcast those on the radio. And I have heard that John Miller is still very actively playing, as he is a Baseball 365 player. And the last celebrity is Dan Shulman. The ESPN Sunday Night Baseball broadcaster is an extremely avid fan and a very good promoter of the organization and its games. And there you are, the top 9 celebrities I believe should be considered for the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. I'm sure I missed many celebrities, but those were the top 9 that I believed were most deserving. The last category we call the Pioneers. The Pioneers is broken down into 2 categories. The first is the influencers. These are the writers, the publishers, the podcasters, the YouTubers, and the streamers who have helped to improve and increase the community and the culture of Strat-O-Matic. The second category for the Pioneers is the legends and icons. These are the individuals throughout the 62-year history of Strat-O-Matic who have warranted the title legend and icon based on their reputation, their influence, and their impact. Let's first look at those who I believe should be candidates for influencers. Now, writers and publishers is very easy, but as you know, I have my own YouTube channel, so podcasters, YouTubers, and streamers do have a very big impact as far as I'm concerned, because over the last 15-20 years, this has been the primary method that most Strat-O-Matic gamers have become familiar and become reconnected with the Strat-O-Matic culture. And here are my top 10 nominees for the Pioneers in the category of influencers, which again are the writers, publishers, podcasters, YouTubers, and streamers that have helped progress the Strat-O-Matic community and the Strat-O-Matic culture. My first nominee is a gentleman called Utah Mike Bowes. He has the YouTube channel Sports Time Machine. He has 175 subscribers. He has about 14,000 views, and he has over 200 Strat-O-Matic baseball videos highlighted and showcased on his channel. Second is somebody who could be considered an influencer or truly could be somebody who you could put as a legend and icon, and that is none other than Glenn Guzzo. He wrote the book Strat-O-Matic Fanatics. It is the book that goes through the history of Strat-O-Matic and talks about its culture as well as its community. He also has been highlighted on the Strat-O-Matic website with The Talk Show. And of course, those of you who probably know him the most and the best is through his Strat Fan newsletter that he put out for many years. Third is another YouTuber. It is Al Red Sox Fan. Pretty much he and Dave Gardner and Uncle Ron with Retro Sports Network, that little trio has done a ton when it comes to cards and dice games, but Al Red Sox Fan is probably the one out of the 3 who has the most Strat-O-Matic videos. He has over 1,700 subscribers, over 500,000 views on his YouTube channel, and he's put over 300 Strat-O-Matic videos with baseball and football primarily being showcased. Fourth is another guy who could be put in as a influencer or as a legend icon, and that is Del Knoll. He is probably most famous for his Strat-O-Matic review and his influence on the early years of the National Strat-O-Matic Convention. Fifth on the list is Del Knoll's brother Warren Knoll. He helped with the Strat-O-Matic review as well as being a big participant and help beginning the National Strat-O-Matic Convention. Del has always gotten most of the notoriety, but Warren definitely has done more than his share to deserve a nomination. Number 6 is Earl Shamblin. He has a YouTube channel called Tabletop Baseball Plus. He has almost 2,000 subscribers. He has over 650,000 views on his channel, and he has posted more than 350 Strat-O-Matic baseball videos. Our 7th influencer is Rick Wolfman Shapiro. He is best known for the Ultimate Strat Baseball newsletter. It was a newsletter that was put out pretty regularly where it included interviews with some people throughout the Strat-O-Matic community as well as the Strat-O-Matic company. Provided tons of information about the history of Strat-O-Matic in the newsletter, as well as many of the current events that were going on at the time. Number 8 is Chris Walrath with the YouTube channel Lower Slower Board Gamer. It was previously called the Tabletop Sports Delaware channel. He has over 1,000 subscribers. He has over 180,000 views with over 100 videos that focus on the Strat-O-Matic baseball, football, and basketball game. What really makes Chris in my opinion, a great influencer is that he does an amazing job trying to showcase and point out and try to get some momentum for new YouTube channels. That includes doing it for myself. The very, very first video that I put out, Chris Walworth saw it and he immediately put on his YouTube channel, trying to let those who subscribe to his channel to check me out. And I really appreciate that. And he's done that for many, many YouTubers. Next up is Mark Wasserman. He was involved in the Ultimate Strat Baseball newsletter with Mark Wolfman Shapiro, and he also has his own YouTube channel under that same name. He is also the commissioner of the CBA Baseball League. Last and certainly not least is Bob Zolke with his YouTube channel Sportsman Z. He also participated in the 50th anniversary Strat-O-Matic Ultimate Fanatic contest where he came in 4th place. He has over 1,600 subscribers, over 250,000 views on his channel, and by far he has the most Strat-O-Matic videos on any channel that I've been able to find, with over 400 and pretty darn close to 500 at this time. I also have a personal appreciation for Sportsman Z. I've highlighted him in my previous videos, and to be honest with you, I think he is probably the best YouTuber when it comes to the Strat-O-Matic community. So those are the top 10 pioneers in the category of influencer, who are the writers, publishers, podcasters, and YouTubers and streamers that I believe deserve consideration for the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. And our last group are the legends and icons under the pioneers. The last category, legends and icons under the pioneers, is pretty much the best of the rest. These are not individuals who have received their notoriety as players of the game. They're obviously not leagues or tournaments. As far as I know, they're not former employees of Strat-O-Matic, and they are not what I would consider celebrities and are well known in the public eye. I would also say that they are not known as what I've referred to as influencers. They are not writers, authors, publishers, YouTubers, streamers, people who have podcasts, but they are what I would say are the rest of those people who deserve recognition, and what I would say is also the hardest to be able to establish. The reason it's so hard to be able to establish this is because there's so many that many people might put into this category. But I have tried my best to find the best of the rest. And so here are my list of the individuals that I would consider legends and icons as pioneers in the history of Strat-O-Matic. First up is Gary Altman. He has 2 websites that are very, very popular with the Strat-O-Matic community. The first one being the Strat-O-Matic World, and the second being the Gary's Ballpark page. These have been great resources for many in the Strat-O-Matic community throughout the last 20-some years. Second is Ed Barrow. He had major involvement and was pretty much the creator of the football game computer manager for the Strat-O-Matic football game. Next is Larry Browse. He was the founder of the TBA, the Table Baseball Association, which was the first major Strat-O-Matic tournament for baseball, which he started in 1986. Fourth is Bruce Bundy, one of my personal favorites. He was a major contributor in many of the early Strat-O-Matic publications, and if you were like me, you probably tried to create many of your own cards, trying to calculate how many home runs should be on a hitter's card or how many strikeouts should be on a pitcher's card. How do you figure out what their E rating was? Well, if you were like me, you probably came across many of Bruce Bundy's writings and calculations that he came up with to try to help us create our own cards. Not only that, he was also a beta tester for many of the Strat-O-Matic games. He is an avid player, and he's been a connector in the Strat-O-Matic community. Fifth is Lynn Durant. He was an independent contractor who helped out Strat-O-Matic. He did a lot of research when it came to the Negro Leagues and the Japanese Leagues to assure that those players had the correct cards and information to be able to have those games that we now play today. Number 6 is Robert Henry. He was the one who created the Baseball Trivia Corner for the Strat-O-Matic Review, a publication that many of us read in the past. But really what brings him a lot of popularity is before there was the Moonlight Graham Marketplace, there was Robert Henry. He was the first to purchase out-of-print sets for customers and sell them to them at a reasonable price. 7th is Will Colazzi, a lesser-known individual in the Strat-O-Matic community, but someone who definitely deserves the recognition. He worked with Gary Altman on the Strat-O-Matic world. The Strat-O-Matic world has been a go-to resource for many in the Strat-O-Matic community when it comes to finding many resources as well as many ratings and rankings on the baseball game. Our 8th nominee is John LaMotta. For 38 years, he has provided the LaMotta's Baseball Bulletin, which has been a draft projection resource guide. Many individuals who play in the various baseball leagues throughout the country have used LaMotta's Baseball Bulletin as a resource to make sure that they make the best possible draft picks in their leagues. Number 9 is a player you've already heard, Pete Nelson. I had him listed as a player because he has won the Strat TPC Championship 4 times, more than any other player. But I believe he is more of a legend and an icon because he was the Star Tournaments and Strat TPC founder. Next up is Dan Patterson. He was the one who created the Strat Fan Forum back in 2001 during the early years of the internet. This quickly became the go-to place for the Strat-O-Matic community, as many individuals would go there to ask questions, share stories, and try to find resources from others within the community. J.G. Preston is our 11th nominee. Those of you who were around during the early years know that the Strat-O-Matic convention was probably the #1 place where many of the people in the Strat-O-Matic community could come together, share their stories, and meet each other in person. He was one of the first commissioners of the Strat-O-Matic convention, as well as one of its most avid organizers. Number 12 is Chris Rosen. Hard to believe I couldn't find a picture of someone so well known in the Strat-O-Matic community. Chris Rosen founded and manages the Moonlight Graham's Marketplace. Outside of the Strat-O-Matic website, this is the go-to place to purchase items in the Strat-O-Matic community. The Moonlight Graham's Marketplace specializes in out-of-print seasons, hard-to-find cards, as well as many products that many gamers and players use to enhance their gaming experience. Not only does Moonlight Graham's Marketplace have an incredible inventory, but its prices are very, very reasonable for those looking to find items. Number 13 is James Sanders. You may recognize the Lyman Bostock Memorial Tournament, which we showcased during the Leagues and Tournaments category. James Sanders was the founder, the creator, and the organizer of the Lyman Bostock Memorial Tournament throughout its existence. Not only that, but James Sanders was one of the most likable and passionate people about building the Strat-O-Matic community and trying to bring those in the community together. And last on the list is Tom Swank. He was commonly known throughout the Strat-O-Matic community as the Missionary. He was a respected ambassador, extremely passionate about the game, loved to play it as much as he possibly could with whoever he could. And he was quite the tournament creator. He created tournaments where every player on the team had to start with a different letter of the alphabet. Or he created a tournament where every player on the team could only have 3 or 4 letters in their last name. He found many ways to try to create tournaments for the simple reason of bringing the community together and try to enjoy the experience as much as possible. Tom Swank was without a doubt a legend and an icon throughout the 62-year history of Strat-O-Matic. There you are, my top picks of legends and icons under the category Pioneers. I'm sure there are many names that I've missed, but again, these are my top picks for who I believe are most deserving to get a nomination and consideration for the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. And there you are, the individuals, leagues, and tournaments that I believe deserve the most consideration for the inaugural class of the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. I presented to you 12 different players. I talked about 10 different leagues and tournaments. I showcased 10 different employees who worked for the Strat-O-Matic company, as well as discussing 9 celebrities. And we finished it off by talking about the 24 pioneers, 10 of which were influencers and 14 of which I consider legends and icons. And at the end of the day, I believe these are the most significant contributors who have helped to improve and increase the company, the community, and the culture of Strat-O-Matic. And when all was said and done, we ended up with 65 potential nominees. So who do I believe is going to make the final cut? And ultimately, who will be included in the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame? Well, keep on watching. Check out the next episode as we're going to go through who I believe will be the actual inductees for the Strat-O-Matic Hall of Fame. So until next time, this is Coach DK. Have a good one. Bye.